Hello and welcome to the Pig and Whistle Tales from Azeroth. As always, here at the Pig and Whistle Inn in Stormwind, I go through a variety of subjects with regards to World of Warcraft. So grab a bottle or a pint, sit back and enjoy. This episode we'll be going over the best and worst moments of my WoW sort of history, career, or just the most memorable things that I've encountered most recently or that I can remember essentially. We'll start off with the weekly news. As always, we have Liskanoth and the Zakali Elders. Liskanoth can be located in Thaldraszus. Yes, Thaldraszus. And Zakali Elders can be located in the Zaralak Caverns. Dragonflight Dungeon is your bonus event for this week. This means that you get an extra piece of gear for completing a dungeon. Temple of Hot Mogu is your, brawl for the week. Essentially, this is a Temple of Kotmogu, but on steroids. Your haste is increased, your speed is increased, a lot of things are increased. The mythic affixes for this week are Tyrannical, Storming, and Raging. Tyrannical, the bosses and the mobs that they spawn, have increased health and damage. Storming, there are these small little hurricanes, simply move away from them. And Raging, when a mob goes below 30%, they will have a 100% damage increase, so kite them, push them back, or soothe them, essentially, to take away the buff. We'll be looking at a Luneth this week, but before we do that, I would like to say a massive thank you to everyone who tunes in each and every week into the tavern, as it is growing with every passing week that you guys are here. I must ask you guys for more of your support, though. The podcast is not my full-time job, and I do put as much effort into it as I possibly can do, without having any sort of content hidden behind a paywall. With all of this said, down below there is a link to support the show from as little as $3 a month. Times are tough, and I do understand this. But any extra support that you could show the show would be a massive help. This would also support the show in terms of getting more content out, so that I do not have to ever stop doing this for you guys, or have to put stuff behind a paywall in order to, actually pay the bills, essentially. But thank you all for taking the time of listening. Now let's get back to the episode. So a Luneth is our weapon of choice that we're going to be diving into the history of this week. And it's a little bit of a complicated history. Some people might just think it's got not a lot to offer. But essentially, a Luneth is a weapon that was wielded by Aegwynn, who is Medivh's mother. It was retired several years before she essentially retired from being the Guardian, and no one kind of knew where the weapon was held. But at the very start, the first creatures of Azeroth to discover a Luneth were the dragons, the blue dragonfly. While manipulating the fabric of reality, they tapped into another realm of existence and made contact with a strange arcane entity. Intrigued by the being's existence, the dragons summoned a Luneth into their stronghold, which is the Nexus, for further study. The entity immediately went on a rampage, destroying countless tomes and artifacts before it was contained by the dragons, who, rather than being angry, were delighted by the creature's capricious nature. After years of conducting harmless experiments on Luneth to sate their curiosity, the dragons sent the creature back to its home realm. Years later, a highborn sorcerer named Maitre, that's what I'm going to go with, came into contact with an unknown blue dragon, from whom he learned the existence of a Luneth and the plane where it dwelled. Sorry. Though he never found a way to enslave a Luneth, Maitre found a way to draw power from the entity to enhance his own powers. During the War of the Ancients, Maitre mastered his connection to the being and on one occasion used this power to mass teleport himself and a group of Night Elf resistant forces to safety away from an overwhelming force of demons. After the War of the Ancients, the Night Elves outlawed the use of arcane magic, as they believed that continuing to wield it would lead to yet another disaster. Metri refused, calling at the thought of losing his connection to Alunith, and retreated from society to become a exile, essentially. He left behind many scrolls that would be used to study the magic for a millennia, but the existence of Alunith was forgotten by all until the time of the Guardian Aegwin. Realizing that Maitri had wielded more power than any regular sorcerer should have been capable of, Aegwin discovered a series of lost scrolls by Maitri, which detailed both Alunith and the spells used to tap into the being's power. Resolving to bind Alunith to her will to use it as a weapon against the Burning Legion, Aegwin summoned the entity to Azeroth with ease, but it refused to obey her commands. It thrashed against her containment magics and nullified her spell work, but the Guardian revelled in the challenge. After many setbacks, she successfully succeeded in binding the entity to an enchanted great staff that would bear the name of the creature, Alunith. However, it would take several more years before the Guardian was able to truly harness its power. During the battle against the Avatar of Sargeras, Aegwin called upon Alunith to assist her, but as the being refused her commands, she was forced to instead summon another great staff, which is Atiesh, to aid her in battle. Even though she defeated the Avatar, a portion of its spirit had been transferred into Aegwin's soul, darkening her thoughts and driving her to distance herself from her allies. The Council of Tirisfal, Aegwin resolved the creature to a hidden refuge in the form of a great tower, using Alunith to warp reality around her until the tower, known henceforth as Karazhan, rose from the earth. So that's kind of the story of Alunith, and then going into Legion, obviously it was the Arcane Mage's artifact weapon. Now, reading about this, it seems like Alunith is actually super powerful and should have been way too powerful for any normal mage to have been able to wield, in all honesty, and it should have been enough just for Alunith to draw the power out of like Sargeras' sword at the end of the expansion. But, you know, it is what it is. All of the weapons in Legion were very powerful. Ashbringer, Fella Malorn, Scythe, the Scythe of Alun, you have Alunith, and many more, obviously. But some of these are stupidly powerful, thinking about it. But let's get straight into the meat and bones of this episode. Now, I've got a few things here about the best and worst moments. And most of them are going to be around arenas this week. There's a little bit of a raid thing there, though, as well. So, dampening the dampeners is what I've got down. Now, anyone who doesn't know, what dampening is in a arena is essentially you start off at 10% reduced healing in an arena. And when you hit a certain marker, I believe it's the 3-minute mark in threes, this number will increase. So every 10 seconds you go to up by 1% of dampening, I believe. It's something along that line. And essentially it will go to 11% less healing, 12% less healing, etc., etc. And the games can get to like some games in the past have gotten to like 80% dampening. It's become that ridiculous, like in the past expansions like Battle for Azeroth, etc. But essentially, our main composition, what we play, is a druid, a boomkin, and a hunter, as well as a mixed variety of healers. We are playing with Holy Paladin right now, is the healer of choice, we'll say. But essentially, this is our main comp, and then we obviously have ults that we go to. We've tried playing some rogue comps, we've tried playing some Shadow Priest comps, and the Shadow Priest one is what we're playing at the moment. We're playing some Shadow play. And what shadow play is essentially is a warlock and a shadow priest, and then any sort of healer. Doesn't really matter what healer. And what shadow play is famous for is essentially dampening. So I just explained what dampening is, but the idea of a dampening sort of arena composition is you don't kill anything until it gets to high dampening, and you just sort of, they kind of hit an enrage timer where you're doing more damage than they can out heal because dampening is at like 60%, that kind of deal. And they're just like going they have no mana, etc. So this is what I mean. And we've been playing a lot of Shadowplay right now. It's kind of getting to the point where it's the same rating as our mains, which is quite funny, to say the least. But essentially, what I mean by the actual thing itself is Augmentation Evoker is a new specialization in patch 10.1.5. And what this specialization is essentially is it kind of plays as a tank spec in PvP, which is kind of annoying. Tank specs in PvP, in my opinion, are a bit ridiculous. You should be able to alter them to somewhat of a DPS class more than anything in PvP scenarios, but it's not great. It really isn't great. But essentially, this Augmentation Evoker is meant to do. It is a DPS spec, so it does a lower end amount of damage. But the idea behind the Augmentation Evoker is that they buff their allies. Now, their allies get really good buffs from them, like a lot of primary stat, a lot of shields, a lot of everything essentially. And this increases the damage of this one target by quite a substantial amount. So technically they have one healer, one support type of class, and then they have one really giga buffed sort of DPS that's meant to just one-shot something. And this is slowly becoming a dampener composition, anything with an Augmentation Evoker. I saw a Affliction Warlock with an Augmentation Evoker. I've seen a Windwalker Monk with one. I've seen a DK. I've seen a Boomkin. There's loads of different variations of this. But essentially, all of them go into very deep dampening to basically... It will get to a point where you won't be able to out-heal the damage that the actual DPS on their team is going to put out. But because we've been playing a lot of Shadow Play, the original dampener classes... all we have to do is run away from that guy when he's popping all of his cooldowns, because that's the only time that they can kill. So what we do is essentially they'll run in, they'll press everything, we just kite it. We just literally wait it out. The Evoker damage literally doesn't do anything. It's pretty impressive if he can kill you by himself. But essentially this is the only time that they will kill you. So this dampening composition gets out dampened by us because we just straight up, when it gets to that high dampening stage, we do more damage because we have 2 DPS, whereas they only have 1 technically. They have 1 that can do 2 lots of damage, 2 players worth, but at the same time you can just CC that 1 DPS, that kind of deal. So it's a very annoying spec, Augmentation Evoker, because it does play like a tank and it gives your DPS really big shields, it gives them buffs, it gives them everything. It's such a supportive class that you just can't kill anything on the opposition team because it's providing so much support, so much shield, so much healing, a lot of different things. But it's quite fun to actually out-dampen them and just be like, yeah, look, this is the composition. This is the original composition that went into deep dampening. You won't beat us. You literally only can beat us if you one-shot us, and we're just never going to let you do that. We're going to run away from you. We're going to slow you. We're going to kite you. We're going to CC you. There's just no chance for you, essentially. So these are actually really fun games that I've been having on my alt character, and these are some of the best moments that I've actually had. There was a couple games where we're at like decently high elo on the alts. We're at like 1800-ish. And we came up against a team on Dalaran Sewers. So Dalaran Sewers, you have the stairs on two corners of this square, and then you have two boxes on the other corners of this square. We go to the middle of the map, and the other team just go to one of these boxes. This is a Shadow Priest and a Fury Warrior with a Holy Paladin. And I kid you not, they just stand there. They just stand at these boxes. We're in our sort of triangle formation. Healers behind us, making the point of the triangle, as it were. And me and the other DPS, the Shadow Priest, are essentially side by side, but 20 yards away from each other. The triangle formation. And essentially, this Fury Warrior and all of that team are stood behind this box. The first time they walk out is the first time they press everything. So about 30 seconds to 45 seconds in, they walk out from behind this box. The warrior charges me, obviously, because warriors do warrior things. Instantly presses Stormbolt, Avatar, Blade Storm, everything. Spellbook, the entire spellbook. I trinket, port. He runs back to the box. On all of his offensive cooldowns, he runs back to the box that he just came from, and he just stands there on all of his cooldowns. It was mind-blowing how passive these guys wanted to play. It made no logical sense how they wanted to play this game. They just stood behind a box, essentially, and did nothing. They literally proceeded to die about a minute 30 seconds into the game because they just never moved from this box. They ended the game with about 100k DPS, 100k damage from the Fury Warrior, about 500k from the Shadow Priest because we had a couple kicks, so we were kicking him off cooldown. And me and the other Shadow Priest that I'm playing with ended up, I think he was probably at like 3 mil damage. I was probably at like 4.5, 5 mil. It was insane. They just stood behind these boxes for an entire arena match and just got absolutely peppered with spells and dots and rotted away behind the boxes. They did nothing. Every time the warrior came out, I had my portal back up. So he charged me, I ported away, and he would run back to the box. It was just a never-ending cycle, and it was so weird to see. I had another game where it's a caster composition we were against. It was a Fire Mage and an Affliction Warlock, what I was playing. And they had a Holy Paladin and we had a Holy Priest. Now, we decided that we wanted to push them and be the aggressive team because if they're all behind a pillar, it means that they don't get a lot of breathing room, their healer isn't going to drink a lot and stuff like that. So this is on Ashermane's Fall. We push behind their pillar, and about 3, 4, 5 minutes into the game, obviously the manners are looking a bit tight and stuff, and they want to try and push out. They want to try and push us away from their pillar. So the mage and the warlock push out a tiny bit, not too much, and they start to threaten us with some damage, but we're not budging. We are not budging at all. Our healers had nice drinks and stuff. We're quite topped up on mana, so we're kind of fine. Their healer, this giant Tauren, this beefy-ass Tauren, waddles out to the opposite pillar that they are. And then he dispels, and because I'm playing with a Shadow Priest, he gets feared from the dispel, from, dispel protection. So he's waddling out into the middle of the arena now, and I've slowed him. So he's very slow in the middle of the arena, and he waddles to the one that is behind us, essentially, where our healer is. So he just waddles over there, and I'm completely ignoring him because he's dotted up. I can't really burst anything as a Affliction Warlock. So I'm like, he's dotted up. My dots will do their thing. I'll focus on these two because he'll eventually have to come back. He is back there for about 10 to 15 seconds, just trying to heal mine and my Shadow Priest dots. And he eventually waddles back out to try and connect to his team. And as soon as we see him peek his beefy ass around that corner, we both just shout out, Pala, look at the Pala, look at the Pala, kill the Pala, kill the Pala, I'll coil him, I'll CC him, I'll fear him, I'll slow him. It's just, everyone's shouting, kill the Pala. So we turn around and just kill this Pala. He is so slow, waddling across the middle of this arena. The best analogy I can give it is sort of a gazelle in the middle of the open plains of the Sahara, and it's just surrounded by a shit ton of lions or something. That's probably the best analogy that I can give of it. He just got absolutely pummeled as he tried to cross this what seemed like a never-ending journey back to his DPS, back to his pillar. Which it's quite funny. He really tried to make something happen, but I don't know how he ended up there. He was so slow. I don't know what he was doing. We actually played him again tonight, and we actually remembered the name. And we did kill him again, by the way. He was the kill target in that game as well, and we did kill him and win that game, which was quite funny. But yeah, it's just hilarious. There's something funny about seeing giant beefy Taurens try and just sneak across the battlefield to do anything. If they try and cavalier to your healer to CC them, it's a giant Kodo running across the battlefield. We can kind of spot that, bud. We're going to CC you on that. It's just many different things that all come together in an arena session, and it's quite funny more than anything. Another good moment is obviously having a good arena session plus a raid session. So recently we did a raid where people needed some, this is on Wrath by the way, some achievements for Glory to the Oldawar raider. And essentially we needed Mimiron hard mode and not Yogg hard mode, general hard mode, because the two people that needed it were not there when we completed the hard modes in the first place. We also needed the Iron Dwarf medium rare achievement, which is where you have to cook 25 dwarves with a fire breath from Razor Scale. So we did that one nice and easy, as we did this last week as well. But the player who needed it couldn't make it last week, so we had to do it again. And essentially we hopped on over to Mimiron as well as General. And these hard modes aren't anything to scoff at. The Mimiron hard mode essentially is something that you shouldn't scoff at, as it is one of the tougher hard modes. But we managed to get it done in 2 attempts. The first attempt we wiped. The second attempt we did manage to kill the boss. And General, we managed to do it after 3 or 4 attempts. We had a bit of a rough patch with the shadow crashes, and essentially we didn't really have the best composition to do it, but we managed to get it done. So having a good raid session is really nice, because we cleared absolutely everything that we needed achievements wise for the guildies. It got them their achievement, it got them their mount and stuff like that, which I'm really happy about. And this is obviously in the middle of trying to progress Anubarak Heroic as well as Algalon still. So, we've been slamming our heads against Anubarak and Algalon the past Sunday. So to get something that went really not flawless, but very well executed, essentially, is quite nice to actually do, because the progression really is a slugfest sometimes. You're just slamming your head against the same boss over and over and over, and you think, oh my god, this is actually just hurting my brain essentially at this point. But to get these achievements done, the next raid is really nice and a good boost for the raiders themselves, essentially. Same can be said for a good arena session. So you can go up 100 rating in a session, you can go down 100 rating in a session, you can go even, but there's no in between of any of these. It's one of these 3. If you are ever having a bad arena session, you'll know everyone will be a bit snappy at each other and be like, oh my god, well, why didn't you bubble? Why didn't you heal me? Why didn't you just go in bear form? Why didn't you just, I don't know, one-shot everything? That kind of deal. If it's going good, it's always everyone's having a piss about, everyone's laughing because you just one-shot someone when you were on the cusp of losing the game or something like that. You know how it is. And then you obviously have the session where it's kind of even. It's oh well, we won half, lost half, we didn't really do much. It was good fun still though. A good arena session really hits differently though. Sometimes it can be after you've had one of your lowest and worst arena sessions. Sometimes it can be just before you've had that lowest or worst arena sessions. Usually, if you have a good arena session, you will have a bad one somewhere in the near future, and vice versa. So keep an eye on that, by the way. That's just my opinion, but it's based off of my data, which I think is somewhat reliable, if I do say so myself. But yeah, these sessions are some of the best memories that you can have in WoW by far, because you're just climbing, you're having a really good laugh, you're pissing about, you're one-shotting everything, everything's going so smoothly, your CC is on point, your damage is immaculate, you know, you're peeling for your teammates, you're surviving on 1% health, when if it was a bad day, you actually wouldn't be, you'd be just straight up dead. You know, everything's going in your favor, and these are some of the best moments in WoW. At the same time, you can get flamed for doing PvP. So obviously looking for group, our healer, we do some late night queue sessions, and our healer might not be up for them at that time. So we go into a pug and we go into a looking for group pug. Now, lately, it has been some of the best pug experiences I've ever had. I've had people who were recording some games, and they asked if it was okay. That we've had some monks which, you know, didn't say anything, and then at the end of the session we went like on a 10-15 game win streak, something, I don't know, it kind of like that, maybe like 15-2 or like 15-3, something like that. But essentially it was, yo guys, this was amazing, thank you all very much for being chill. And like the more games you win at the start, the more people start to chat and like hang out and, you know, enjoy their time actually while playing, like in this looking for group pug essentially. But we had a guy who had never, like, I say never, he had done arenas, but not since Cataclysm. And bless him, his honor level was like level 13. We're like not the best group in order to get into arenas. But Cataclysm 13 years ago is the last time he stepped into an arena in 3s, and I'm gonna be brutally honest with you guys, he wasn't great. He was not great at all. I say that with the kindest, in the kindest way that I can, because you could see that he was trying. Now, this brings up a point. Arena is not new player friendly at all. Arenas are actually really daunting for players. Purely on especially if you go into 3s. Now, in his defense, he shouldn't be playing at the rating that me and my Shadow Priest were playing at. That's not an ego thing. That is purely on the basis of we are on kind of the higher end. We're just above average. And this guy hadn't played for 13 years in 3s, and you could tell. You could really tell his average, or he was a little bit below average, I would say, for his skill set, but you could really tell that he was trying. But like I said, arenas is really not friendly, because you go into an arena, if you're not fully geared, enchanted and stuff, you're going to be at a disadvantage. Okay, I'll get gear and enchant it. Suddenly you're at a disadvantage because you don't have the certain add-ons. You don't have Omnibar, you don't have like S-Arena to track diminishing returns, stuff like that. So it's like, oh, okay, I'll get that. And then suddenly you get one shot by a full moon, and you're like, what hit me there? And it's like, oh, okay, I'll keep an eye out for full moon when I go against a balanced druid. And then you get one shot by like a TSG, like a DK and a warrior cleave, and it's like, what the hell even hit me there? And it's like, okay, so this is when they're gonna go. You know, it's so unuser friendly and really just throws you in the deep end with it. That it's so tough to learn, and it does become very daunting for newer players to try and get into the arena scene. And I feel like there needs to be some sort of stepping stones in order to get people in there. Now, obviously, people could do battlegrounds and stuff like that. I feel like there should be, I say, an offline bracket for people who do threes, which kind of what Arena Skirmish is, but you really don't get that feel of competitiveness when it is a 3v3 like actual game. So I don't know, is there, I don't really know the solution to it. A lot of the practice will come from solo shuffle. And this guy had done a bit of solo shuffle, but it's a completely different game when you're going into it at a higher elo than what you are, and people are like comming. Because solo shuffle, people don't use comms. People aren't talking to each other actively. They aren't calling strats and stuff in game. They are essentially there as solo players with 5 other random people not talking. You know, solo shuffle can only get you so far and prepped, but it is still a very daunting task to even go into solo shuffle, especially as a healer. Everyone blames the healers in solo shuffle when it really isn't the case. It shouldn't be at all. So if there's going to be one thing that I leave everyone with, it is how would people actually make Arena more accessible to those who haven't done it ever, like haven't played Arena ever, or have not played Arena in a very long time, because it is a daunting factor to try and get into for the new player base of World of Warcraft. But that is it for this episode. Thank you all very much for listening, as always. Do check out all of the socials down below. We have Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, constant stuff happening on all of the socials. But once again, thank you all very much for listening, and go with Valor, friend. Goodbye all.